Story 1. The Flute in the Midnight Woods. In the heart of San Antonio, Texas, where the sprawling city gives way to pockets of untamed wilderness, there lies a place called O.P. Schnabel Park. By day, it's a haven of scenic trails, shaded by ancient oaks and alive with the chatter of joggers and dog walkers. But when the sun dips below the horizon, the park transforms into a labyrinth of shadows, its paths cloaked in an eerie stillness that seems to whisper secrets to those who dare to tread. It was here in the spring of 2020, during the early days of the global pandemic, that I, an 18-year-old thrill seeker named Ethan, embarked on an adventure that would haunt me for years to come. I was in my senior year of high school, a time when the world felt like it was unraveling. Schools had shuttered, businesses had boarded up, and the streets of San Antonio were eerily quiet. But for me and my tight-knit group of friends, the lockdown was less a restriction and more an invitation to defy the rules. We were young, restless, and hungry for excitement. While the world stayed indoors, we roamed the city's forgotten corners, abandoned warehouses, crumbling churches, anywhere that promised a story. I'd always been drawn to the unknown, to the adrenaline rush of urban exploration and the thrill of chasing ghosts in haunted places. I'd faced down vagrants in derelict buildings, stared into the barrel of a gun once, and walked away unscathed. Fear wasn't something that clung to me, or so I thought. That spring, I'd started talking to Clarissa, a girl from my history class with a shy smile and a quiet strength that intrigued me. She wasn't like me. She didn't crave the rush of danger, but there was a spark between us, a tentative connection that was just beginning to bloom. One night, fueled by a mix of bravado and the desire to impress her, I convinced her to join me on an exploration of O.P. Schnabel Park. It was a risky move. The park had a dark reputation, stained by tragedy. In 2016, a young woman named Lauren Bump had been brutally murdered there, her body found riddled with over 20 stab wounds. In 2021, a teenage boy exploring the woods had been shot, his life snuffed out in the darkness. The police patrolled the entrances at night, barring access to keep thrill seekers like me at bay. But I knew a back way in, a hidden trail that snaked through the underbrush, far from prying eyes. We arrived at the park just after 3 a.m., the witching hour when the world holds its breath. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, and the moon was a faint sliver, its light smothered by the dense canopy of trees. Clarissa clung to my arm, her breath quickening as we stepped onto the main trail. I kept my flashlight off, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. The beam would only blind us, I explained, and it might draw unwanted attention. Besides, I liked the challenge of navigating by instinct, feeling the world around me rather than seeing it. Clarissa wasn't so sure, but she trusted me, or at least she wanted to. For the first 15 minutes, the park was silent, save for the crunch of gravel under our feet and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. The quiet was oppressive, unnatural, as if the woods were holding their breath, watching us. Clarissa's grip on my arm tightened, and I could feel her unease growing. I tried to keep things light, cracking jokes about ghosts and serial killers, but my words fell flat, swallowed by the darkness. I was starting to regret bringing her here. The park felt different tonight, heavier, like it was waiting for something. We were about to turn back when I remembered a shortcut, an off-road trail that looped back to where I'd parked my truck. It would cut our time in half, I told Clarissa, and get us out of this creepy place sooner. She nodded, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and trust. We veered off the main path, stepping into a narrower trail choked with brambles and low-hanging branches. The darkness here was absolute, a living thing that pressed against us, making every step feel like a descent into the unknown. We hadn't gone far, maybe 2 minutes, when it began. A sound, faint at first, like a whisper on the wind. It grew clearer, more distinct, until there was no mistaking it. The haunting, melodic trill of a flute. It was beautiful in a way, its notes weaving a delicate, almost mournful tune. But in the context of that pitch-black forest at 3 a.m., it was the most terrifying sound I'd ever heard. Clarissa and I froze, our eyes locking in shared disbelief. The flute played on, its cadence perfect, as if performed by a master musician. But there was no warmth in it, no humanity. It felt like a lure, a siren's call meant to draw us deeper into the woods. "Who's out there?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Clarissa didn't answer. She was trembling. Her breath salvos were flying from her eyes. The flute grew louder, closer, its notes now sharp and insistent, like a warning. I tried to pinpoint its source, but the sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the trees in a way that defied logic. It was as if the forest itself was playing, the music woven into the very air. Clarissa's fear was palpable now, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We need to go. Now." I wanted to reassure her, to tell her it was just some prankster, but the truth was, I was scared too. I'd faced danger before, but this was different. This felt wrong, unnatural, like we'd stumbled into something we weren't meant to see. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the flute stopped. The silence that followed was worse, heavy with anticipation. I grabbed Clarissa's hand, pulling her toward the off-road trail. "Run," I said, my voice low but urgent. We sprinted, branches clawing at our clothes, the darkness swallowing us whole. My heart pounded, adrenaline flooding my veins. I kept expecting to hear the flute again, to feel something chasing us, but there was only the sound of our ragged breathing and the snap of twigs underfoot. We'd only gone about 30 feet when it happened. A rustling in the bushes, sudden and violent, followed by the crack of breaking branches. Something big darted across the trail in front of us. It moved so fast it was a blur, a shadow without form. I couldn't make out its shape, but I felt its presence, a weight in the air that made my skin crawl. It wasn't a deer, I was sure of that. Deer don't move like that, don't leave behind a lingering sense of dread. The wind seemed to shift, carrying a chill that hadn't been there before. Clarissa screamed, a sound that tore through the night. I didn't think, I just acted. I spun us around, dragging her back toward the main trail. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I'd seen, or hadn't seen. The flute started again, louder this time, its notes now wild and discordant, like a mocking laugh. It was closer, too close, as if whoever or whatever was playing it had been waiting for us to return. We reached the main trail, the cement path a small comfort under our feet. The flute was everywhere now, surrounding us, its melody shifting into something almost festive, like an Irish jig gone wrong. I could feel Clarissa's panic mirroring my own, her prayers now a desperate litany for salvation. I wanted to stop, to face whatever was out there, but I knew we had to keep moving. The main trail was our only chance, our lifeline back to the truck. We ran, our footsteps pounding against the pavement, the flute chasing us like a living thing. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't dare slow down. Along the way, we passed a lone porta potty, its silhouette looming like a sentinel in the darkness. I imagined someone hiding inside, waiting to spring out, but there was no time to check. We kept running, the flute fading slightly, then surging again, as if toying with us. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached the truck. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys, the engine roaring to life as I slammed my foot on the gas. The park receded in the rearview mirror, but the flute's echo lingered in my mind, a melody I couldn't shake. We didn't speak until we were miles away, the city lights a welcome reminder of civilization. The next day, I told my friends what had happened, expecting skepticism, but Clarissa backed me up, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. We searched online for answers, scouring forums and local news archives for anything about flutes in O.P. Schnabel Park. There were stories of ghosts, of cults, of strange noises in the woods, but nothing about a flute. I even drove by the park during the day, hoping to find some clue, a discarded instrument, a campsite, anything. But the woods were silent, their secrets buried deep. Years later, I'm 22 now, and I still explore abandoned places, still chase the thrill of the unknown. But I've never gone back to O.P. Schnabel Park at night. The memory of that flute, of that unseen thing in the woods, is a weight I carry, a reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Was it a prank, A ghost? Or something older? Something tied to the land itself? I don't know. All I know is that every time I hear a flute, my heart skips a beat, and I'm back in those woods, running from a sound that shouldn't exist. Story 2. The Phantom of the Fifth Floor. In the quiet town of Florence, Alabama, nestled among rolling hills and sleepy neighborhoods, stands a medium-sized hospital where I, a 20-year-old pharmacy technician named Caleb, have spent the last 2 years working the night shift. It's a grueling schedule, 6 p.m. to 4 a.m., 7 days on, 7 days off. The 7 days off are a godsend, a chance to recharge and feel human again. But the 7 days on are a slow descent into exhaustion, a test of endurance that's left its mark on my body and mind. Lately, I've noticed the toll it's taken. Insomnia creeping in, my thoughts growing hazy, my perception of reality fraying at the edges. But nothing could have prepared me for the night that changed everything. A night that made me question whether what I saw was a hallucination or something far more sinister. It was a Tuesday in early April 2025, my 6th night of the week's shift. I'd been awake since 2 p.m. the previous day, pushing through on sheer willpower in a steady stream of energy drinks. My wife, Emma, was staying at her aunt's house 30 minutes away, babysitting her young cousins while her aunt and uncle were on a trip. The house, a sprawling old place with no curtains, had left Emma uneasy, her anxiety growing with each passing night. She'd insisted I didn't need to come, pointing out that I'd only arrive at 5 a.m., just as the sun was rising. But on her final night, her voice on the phone was tight with fear, and I knew I had to go. I left work early, around 2 a.m., and drove to the house, my eyes burning with fatigue. When I arrived, Emma was waiting at the door, her face pale but relieved. I tried to sleep, curling up on the couch in the living room, but my body refused to cooperate. The insomnia that had been creeping up on me was now a constant companion, keeping me awake even as exhaustion weighed me down. By morning, I was running on fumes, my mind a fog of half-formed thoughts. The day was a whirlwind. We dropped Emma's cousins off at school, attended a friend's gender reveal party, and ran errands to restock our fridge, which had been empty since Emma's stay at her aunt's. I managed a 10-minute nap in the car, a fleeting moment of relief that did little to dull the edge of my fatigue. By the time we headed to the hospital for my final shift of the week, I was a walking zombie, my brakes shot and my car sidelined, leaving Emma to drive me. Neither of us trusted me behind the wheel, not after over 24 hours without sleep. The hospital was quieter than usual that night, its halls bathed in the sterile glow of fluorescent lights. I settled into my routine, stocking the surgery rooms with medications and listening to music through my earbuds to keep the tiredness at bay. The surgery wing was always desolate at night, its operating rooms empty save for the occasional late procedure. I was used to the solitude, the way the silence amplified every sound. The hum of machines, the distant footsteps of housekeeping staff, the creak of a door. It was around 1 a.m. when the first incident occurred. I was in one of the surgery rooms stocking an Omnicell machine when I heard the door behind me open. The hinges squealed, a high-pitched wail that cut through my music, followed by the heavy thud of the door closing. I turned, expecting to see a nurse or surgeon grabbing supplies, and flashed a polite smile. But the room was empty. No one was there. I frowned, brushing it off as a mistake. Maybe someone had opened the door, seen me, and left. Hospitals are full of strange noises after all. I moved to the next room, pushing my cart through the dimly lit hallway. The light in this room was off, casting it in shadow. I opened the door and froze. There, hunched over the Omnicell's sharps bin, was a figure. It was too dark to make out details, but I could see the outline of a person, their movements frantic as they rummaged through the bin. My heart skipped a beat. I'd heard stories of staff stealing morphine from sharps bins, a desperate act that had cost one employee their job. I reached for the light switch, ready to confront them, but when the fluorescent bulbs flickered on, the room was empty. The sharps bin was untouched, the Omnicell silent. I stood there, my pulse racing, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation could play tricks on the mind, couldn't it? I shook it off and finished stocking the surgery rooms, my unease growing with every step. By 2 a.m., I was back in the pharmacy, preparing to deliver patient-specific medications to the nurses' stations. The hospital's layout was familiar, each floor a mirror of the one below it. The fifth floor, where I headed next, was divided into two sides: the 5,100 to 5,200 wing and the 5,400 to 5,500 wing, with 3 elevators in the center. The 5,400 to 5,500 side was under renovation, its patients relocated to the 3rd floor, leaving the wing empty and eerily silent. I delivered the meds to the 5,100 to 5,200 side without issue, then on a whim decided to check the progress of the renovations on the 5,400 to 5,500 side. The hallway was dark, the air heavy with the scent of fresh paint and sawdust. The patient rooms, usually bustling with activity, were vacant, their beds stripped, their monitors off. The emptiness was unsettling, a stark contrast to the life that normally filled these halls. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing, my flashlight casting long shadows on the walls. As I passed room 5,512, I heard a noise, a faint rattling, like a hospital bed being shaken. I stopped, my breath catching. The sound grew louder, more insistent, and I peered into the room. What I saw stopped my heart. An old man lay in the bed, his body convulsing violently, as if gripped by a seizure. Blood streamed from his eyes, nose, and mouth, pooling on the white sheets. He made a guttural, gurgling sound, like something out of a horror movie, while the monitor beside him beeped frantically, signaling a code. I stepped back, my mind screaming at me to run, to get help. But then I remembered, this wing was empty. There were no patients here, no staff. I forced myself to look again, stepping into the room with my flashlight raised. The bed was clean, the monitor silent, the room untouched. It was as if the man had never been there. My knees buckled and I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. I was hallucinating, I told myself. I had to be. I'd read that sleep deprivation could cause hallucinations after 30 to 48 hours, and I was well past that mark. I hurried back to the elevators, my heart still pounding. As the doors opened on the 1st floor, an old man in a security uniform stepped on. He was thin, with deep-set eyes and a weathered face. As he passed me, he patted my shoulder, a gesture that felt oddly familiar. I froze. It was him, the man from the bed, the man who'd been bleeding and convulsing. He smiled at me, a slow, knowing smile, and the elevator doors closed. I watched the numbers climb to the 5th floor, my stomach churning. I hadn't pressed any buttons, but the elevator returned to the 1st floor moments later, its doors opening to reveal nothing. It was empty. I ran to the pharmacy, collapsing into a chair, my mind reeling. I pulled out my phone and searched for information on sleep deprivation hallucinations. The internet confirmed what I'd suspected. Hallucinations could start between 30 and 48 hours without sleep. I was at hour 38. It made sense, but it didn't feel right. The man had been so vivid, so real. His touch on my shoulder, his smile, they weren't the stuff of dreams. As I waited for Emma to pick me up, I kept my eyes on the pharmacy's window, which offered a view of the hospital's upper floors. I don't know why I looked, but I did. And there in the 5th floor window was the old man, staring down at me. His face was expressionless, his eyes locked on mine. I felt a chill, like ice water in my veins. I climbed into Emma's car, saying nothing, and went home to sleep, collapsing into bed as soon as we arrived. It's been 2 weeks since that night, and I haven't seen the man again. But I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there, watching. Was it a hallucination, a trick of my sleep-deprived mind? Or was it something else, something tied to the hospital's walls, its history of life and death? I don't know. All I know is that every time I walk those halls, I feel his eyes on me, and I wonder if I'll ever sleep soundly again. Story 3, The Stranger in the Shadows. In a quiet, upscale neighborhood in a small New England town, my boyfriend Matt and I live in a modest but charming single-story home. It's not the grandest house on our block, but its 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and cozy basement make it our own slice of paradise. The street curves in a way that grants us rare privacy, shielding us from the prying eyes of neighbors. The 8 houses on our block are spaced far enough apart to feel secluded, and a small wooded area at the end of the street adds to the sense of isolation. Violent crime is almost unheard of here, making our home a safe haven, or so we thought. Last October, Matt left for a bachelor party in Las Vegas, leaving me alone from Thursday to Monday. I was used to his occasional trips, but this one felt different. The house, usually warm and inviting, seemed to grow colder in his absence. Its shadows longer, its creaks louder. On Friday, after a long day at work, I invited a few friends over for a wine night. We sprawled across the living room, sipping Merlot and watching horror movies, the kind that make you laugh at their absurdity while secretly checking the locks. Around 10 p.m., as a masked killer stalked across the screen, the doorbell rang. The sound was jarring, cutting through our laughter like a knife. We froze, exchanging wide-eyed glances. A doorbell at this hour in our quiet neighborhood felt like a scene from the movie we were watching. I crept to the window trying to peer onto the porch, but the angle was wrong, and the darkness outside was impenetrable. The door had a small glass panel at the top, so I tiptoed over and peeked through it. The porch was empty, but 4 cars sat in the driveway, a clear sign the house was occupied. Whoever had rung the bell had to know someone was home. I returned to my friends, shrugging it off as a prank. Kids playing ding-dong ditch, maybe. We laughed nervously, trying to recapture the evening's lightness, but the mood had shifted. By midnight, my friends left, and I locked the door behind them, double-checking the windows before heading to bed. I fell asleep quickly, the wine and exhaustion pulling me under. But less than an hour later, at 1 a.m., the doorbell rang again, twice, sharp and insistent. I bolted upright, my heart racing. No one visits at this hour, not in our neighborhood. I grabbed my phone and called Matt, my fingers trembling as I dialed. He answered from a noisy bar, his voice slurred with alcohol. I explained what was happening, my words tumbling out in a rush. He told me to stay in the bedroom and not open the door, his tone serious despite his drunkenness. He didn't mention calling the police, so I hesitated, unsure if I was overreacting. I tried to calm down, lying back in bed and focusing on my breathing. Just as my pulse began to slow, I heard it, a faint clicking sound from outside, like metal on metal. Then a knock at my bedroom window. I froze, my blood turning to ice. A man's voice, low and gravelly, called out, "Hey, anyone home? I need some help out here." The blinds were closed, thank God, but the thought of someone standing inches away, separated only by glass, made my skin crawl. He knocked again, harder this time, and said, "I know you're home." That was it. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, whispering to the operator that someone was trying to break in. I stayed low, my voice barely audible, terrified the man could hear me. The operator promised help was on the way, but every second felt like an eternity. 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang again, followed by loud, aggressive knocks. I crept to the front door, my heart in my throat, and called out, "Who is it?" "It's the police," a man replied, his voice different from the one at the window, calmer, authoritative. I peeked through the glass panel and saw 2 officers, their flashlights cutting through the night. I opened the door, relief flooding me, but it was short-lived. The taller officer, a broad-shouldered man with a stern face, walked in without invitation, his demeanor cold and dismissive. He said they were responding to a disturbance, but when I explained about the man at the window, he cut me off, telling me to shush and asking questions I'd already answered. Like what the man looked like, despite my saying I hadn't seen him. His attitude was infuriating. He spoke over me, his tone dripping with condescension. And at one point he snapped, "Well, you're the one who called us, ma'am. If you don't want our help, we can leave." I was stunned. I'd never called the police before, and I hadn't expected this. A power trip from someone meant to protect me. I apologized, hating myself for it, and explained again, my voice shaking. The second officer, shorter and silent, stood in the background, offering no support. They searched the property, their flashlights sweeping the yard, but it was perfunctory at best. They returned to the door and told me there was nothing they could do without cameras or proof of wrongdoing. Then they left, leaving me alone with my fear. I went back to bed, locking every door and window, and somehow managed to sleep until morning. Saturday was a blur of errands and preparations for a Halloween party at my friend Sarah's house. I threw myself into the distraction, dressing as Velma from Scooby-Doo while Sarah went as Daphne. The party was a welcome escape, filled with laughter and music, and I stayed until after 1 a.m., sober enough to drive home. But when I stepped inside, the house felt wrong. A cool draft greeted me, and I noticed the dining room window was open. I frowned, trying to recall if I'd left it that way. I shut it, brushing it off as forgetfulness, and headed to the bathroom to brush my teeth. That's when I saw it, the basement door wide open. I froze, my breath catching. We never left that door open. It was a rule born of Matt's insistence on security. Then I heard it, a faint, rhythmic clicking, like a pen tapping on wood. It was coming from the basement. I edged closer, my heart pounding, until I stood at the top of the stairs, staring into the pitch-black void below. The clicking stopped, and a voice, low, chilling, and unmistakably male, said, "You're finally home." Panic seized me. I slammed the door shut, grabbed my phone, and ran outside, banging on my neighbor's door until he answered, bleary-eyed but concerned. I called the police from his living room, my voice trembling as I explained what I'd heard. To my dismay, the same two officers arrived, this time with my neighbor, a burly man named Tom, by my side. The taller officer was less abrasive, though still curt. They searched the house, checking the basement, closets, every corner I pointed out. I was on the phone with Matt, who was drunk and barely coherent, as I tore through the house, desperate to prove I wasn't imagining things. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no trace of an intruder. The officers left, and Tom stayed until I felt safe enough to pack a bag. I drove to my sister's house, locking every window before I left, and stayed there until Matt returned. The police wrote it off as a possible prank, but I knew what I'd heard. That voice, those words, they were real, and they've haunted me ever since. We still live in the house, but for months I couldn't be alone there for long. The trauma lingers, manifesting in nightmares, where I hear knocks at the window or that voice from the basement. I've learned to triple-check locks, to keep windows secured, to trust my instincts. But I'll never forget the terror of those nights, the certainty that someone was watching, waiting, and the chilling possibility that they might come back.